Welcome to another episode of Bridges to Success. I'm your host, Doug Cullen of Pinkerton Academy. Today we're here at Pinkerton Academy with a panel of state leaders discussing best practices in connecting the education community to industry and some of the challenges that still remain here in New Hampshire to help assure tomorrow's workforce is well aware of what New Hampshire offers today for opportunity. Our panelists represent a broad spectrum of expertise, including labor, banking, workforce development, secondary education, and higher education. Our experts will be sharing what they've seen as most effective bridge-building programs throughout the state, but also leaving you, the viewer, with certain calls to action and a reminder that there's still much work ahead of us. Our panel facilitator is none other than well-known WMUR TV reporter and host of New Hampshire Business, New Hampshire Bridge Builder advocate himself, Mr. Fred Coker of Coker Associates, and past president of the High Tech Council.
State Senator Regina Birzado.
We've done a number of things. We passed full-day kindergarten, which passed last year, and it'll be, I think that's one that's going to be tied with Keno. And that should be initiating in 2019. That should be able to help bring some of the younger people back into New Hampshire, because that was one of the big issues that was targeted. We also, in 2017, the legislature passed Senate Bill 101, which lowered the age for high school students to be able to go to career and technical education centers. Rochester Career and Technical Education, in the trailer bill of the budget last year, House Bill 25, we went ahead and expanded the funding to the Rochester Career and Technical Education Center. We also added, in 2018, this year, House Bill 1674, added engineering and technologies and computer science and digital literacy to the adequate education in New Hampshire. And there's, I believe, I haven't seen it yet. I'm reading through the bill now. Tomorrow we're supposed to be voting on a major funding bill, and I believe there will be legislation in that bill. It's basically what we call the Christmas tree bill, which has a lot of things that were added to it. And I believe there may be some focus on helping students in certain areas paying back their loans. Well, can I just push in there a little bit? My stepdaughter graduated from Pinkerton, and I will say they are now in their early 30s, and a group of them, they're all starting to come back to New Hampshire. They've all started moving in, so I think a lot of what happens is the graduates from college go out, and they find out what a great place New Hampshire is, and they start coming back when they're ready to raise children.
I think that's yes, you're absolutely right. Now, two questions about the New Hampshire's post-secondary schools or colleges and universities developing a workforce that is relevant to the needs of New Hampshire businesses. And I'm going to turn to the president of Manchester Community College, Susan Dewar. How proactive are our colleges and universities, including yours, in developing a workforce relevant to the needs of New Hampshire?
I would say extremely proactive at this time. There are so many initiatives underway to really support our businesses, whether we're talking about the advisory committees that colleges have for each of their degree programs, or we're talking about the work that we've done with the state on the Sector Partnership Initiative, and the way that we're changing how we deliver instruction. The recent push that began with Exeter Hospital, for instance, around medical assisting is a great example. Now a person who's employed by the hospital can receive 12 weeks of college training, go for 4 weeks of an internship, and then have a job. And what we're finding now, because that program has been around for a couple of years, that those students are then coming to the college for an associate degree, and we hope a path into bachelor's and so on. And that's the theme right now, is what can we do immediately, what do we need to do long-term with our business partners, and how can we support not only their need for workers, but the hopes and dreams of students. I would say what is happening across our colleges, 2-year and 4-year in the state, is that we're being very clear and very descriptive about that pathway. which is new. We don't want people to spend more time than they need to achieve whatever their dream is. And so by being explicit, we're helping them.
Let me turn to the Labor Commission here in the state.
I think it's really important for me to use opportunities like this to talk to people in the business community and in the education community about the fact that my department does have to approve school-to-work initiatives. And the reason for that, our interest at the Labor Department is to ensure, that student laborers are not being in any way abused. So that's our interest. What I would say, too, is that having some experience with employers in my former life before becoming a commissioner, employers are sometimes reluctant to have young people working for them and having them in their environment because of the interest that my department has in that. And I would really encourage employers to please reach out to us. 271-3176 is our phone number, and the relevant department's phone number. And you'll find that the approval process for school-to-work initiatives is really, really simple. We are looking for, and I think Ms. Heward was just saying this about clarity of goals and clarity of objectives in a program. That's what we're looking for, is to make sure that there's a connection to a relevant classroom experience in the workplace, and so that there's a connection there, and there are actually people involved, both on the employment side, but also on the school side, to ensure that there are real, clear objectives for learning in that environment, and make sure that the student is protected.
Some of the most innovative and best practices for growing the workforce pipeline in New Hampshire, and one of them is apprenticeships, which you know something about.
Yes. Although the federal government, should be very clear, the federal government has taken responsibility for registering and approving apprenticeship programs throughout the state. I do have a role as the chairman of the Apprenticeship Advisory Council here in New Hampshire, and I think that apprenticeships are often overlooked as an opportunity for getting people into the workforce. And really, we should not, I think that there's probably a likelihood that people will look at apprenticeships only from the criteria of a traditional apprenticeship like carpentry or electricians, electrical work, or plumbing, or that sort of thing. But there's no reason that we can't have apprenticeships in finance, in healthcare. The New Hampshire Motor Transport Association, for example, just graduated its first apprentice in the heavy-duty trucking industry, and it's fascinating to see some of the folks involved in apprenticeship today in New Hampshire.
The Board of Trustees are not all educators. They're an interested, critical thinking group of individuals from all of our sending districts. And our overarching goal is to listen to the educators, listen to our commissioner, and come up with the best thing for all students. And so Pinkerton Academy looks at itself as a student-centered community, and that's our strongest goal. And for an institution that's over 200 years old, it's been we've had some growing pains, because that has not been the didactic, I will speak, you will listen model that has come down through the years, but student-centered model. Now, what does that mean to me? It means that we are looking for every program possible to do the best thing for each individual student. The best thing for each individual student. That's not easy always to do, and it involves guidance, it involves class advisors, it involves these apprenticeships, these externships. We're very, very fortunate here with Mr. Doug Cullen, who I think has led the state in the relationships he has developed with businesses and commerce in general. We have over 500 externships and relationships with businesses from the trades up through law offices, healthcare facilities, and these are bearing fruit right now. So that each student can look and say, well, I might not be a professor at MIT, but I might want to be cosmetology, have my own shop.
Sure.
So we have a great CTE program.
That's career and technical education.
Career and technical education. We do a good job that way.
Okay. This is the largest secondary school in the state. Is that correct?
Yes.
You have over 3,000
maybe
students?
in the nation. Maybe private in the nation.
Isn't that right? That's something most people probably don't know. Thank you. It's appropriate to go to the chair of the board first, which I should have done, right? Now, we go to Dr. Timothy Powers, the acting headmaster of Pinkerton Academy, and same question. What about the relationship here between the academy and the workforce in New Hampshire? What's your take on the relationship, and what's your vision going forward for that?
So I think we have a good relationship, but it's one that always can be worked on and improved. When you look at our class of 2017, most recent graduates, 54% went on to four-year colleges, 14% went on to two-year colleges, 19% went right into the workforce. So we have a variety of paths that students take when they leave here. So our job is we have to prepare them for that next step. So we have to not only do what we think is right, but also listen to where their next step is taking them and know what is needed of them. So if they're going into the workforce, what skill set is needed to enter right into the workforce? If they're going to a four-year college, what skill set's required to succeed in the four-year college? If they're going to a two-year college, what skill set is needed to succeed there?
So you're talking a little bit about customizing some of this, right?
Correct. Yeah. So each, we do have nearly 3,300 students, but they're 3,300 individual students, and the path that they take here and when they leave here is not all the same. They may take very similar classes, and they may have the same classes as a counterpart, but the path they take within the class and the direction they take after they leave here is different. It's individual.
Do you utilize internships at all, or any kind of something, a relationship like that with local businesses?
We do. We have internships. We have, as the sophomores in their social studies class, they have a field experience that they have to partake in. They have to go out and they have to spend a day out in the community in a job and job shadow to get a taste of what it's like. And they come back, and that can help guide them in career choices in course selection and where they'd like to go and what they'd like to do, and then go down the path, and maybe they do enter into an internship. They enter into a CTE program, and they get certification. They can leave here as an LNA. They can have certifications in welding, in electricity, and cosmetology. They can get college credits through different AP classes, Running Start classes, so they can have a leg up when they leave here, and have their path, have some direction already in their path of where they're choosing to go.
Good. Great. Let's turn to financial literacy, something that is a priority now in many ways in the state in the education arena. And let me turn to the Education Commissioner, Frank Edelblut. Frank, how are students being made aware of the costs of education, higher education in particular, and is that, are they realizing that cost when they're in high school just before they head off to college? What's your take on that?
So it was interesting, just before I came to this show, I was at a financial literacy opportunity for 8th grade students that is run by our credit unions throughout the state, and it is a great program. And in this program, students get to take some assessments and select a vocation, and they know what their average wages are going to be, and then they have to go around to these different booths and put their lives together financially. And that includes the cost of higher education and what their student loans might be in that particular vocation that they then have to pay back. So they get a real exposure to how they can access education as well as pay for it in the long run. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities there.
Are there parents with them when they learn this?
Actually, so as a parent of an 8th grader, we learn about it when they get home.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But I could also tell you we do FAFSA days, in the state where we basically are going out to the schools and holding assemblies where we explain to students the various financing options that are available for higher education, to expose them to that and help them to understand how they might access higher education. And then finally, there's a lot of programs in the state, scholarship programs, both state scholarship programs, the governor's programs, as well as private scholarship opportunities, as well as federal programs that help create opportunities to make education accessible to students.
Yeah. Let me ask the same question of the New Hampshire Banking Commissioner, Jerry Little, who's sitting right next to me, who has had more involvements than just being banking commissioner, former state senator. Jerry, your take on that?
The program that Commissioner Edelblut just referenced, the CU for Reality program, is one that the banking department staff participates in very heavily and regularly. As a matter of fact, we had staff here at Pinkerton today for the event, and it dovetails nicely with the second financial literacy program we're involved in, which is the Jumpstart Coalition. CU for Reality really brings real-life financial activity and responsibilities to forward in the minds of younger people, whereas Jumpstart Coalition sort of takes it from there and brings it to the older students. And through both of them, what we're trying to do is to get people to think about long-range planning well in advance of when normally it might happen, absent these types of programs to step in and bring the idea forward. I think New Hampshire itself deserves a pat on the back. It's one of few states that actually has a financial literacy or economics requirement for graduation from public school. Many states don't make that kind of requirement, and I'm very pleased that New Hampshire does. Ultimately, we want students to think early about the value that they expect to get from a higher education. In the financial services industry, we would call it return on investment, ROI. When I went to the University of New Hampshire in the early and mid-'70s, it was a pretty affordable deal. And you could get into college and university and, halfway or two-thirds of the way through your program decide, I don't think this is really what my personal interest is. I think I'll change my major. Right. And it didn't have a major dramatic financial hit on the student and their family. At this point in time, with the cost of college and university being what it is, folks need to know in advance, if they possibly can. And I know I wasn't prepared to make a decision about what my life was going to be all about, but if I'm going to spend $20,000, $30,000 a year for a higher education, I need to know that it's going to result in a career that will result in compensation, payment back to me, that will allow me to pay off that debt.
Right. And just as a side note, as many of you know who are watching this, we have some of the highest college tuitions in the country in the public and private sector. So this program, the programs that Jerry was just talking about and that Frank was talking about, are so important. Let's turn to professional development. And professional development is something that is increasing in New Hampshire, and this is a situation where businesses are looking to bring professional development such as leadership, customer service, communications to their middle-level employees in particular, and leadership also, who have skills, but maybe not leadership skills or customer service skills or communication skills. So that is something that I am involved in at Granite State College, and that Sarah Colson is involved in at the Business Industry Association of New Hampshire. But before I talk about professional development myself, Sarah, you're in the 65-25 program, which is something that most people don't know about. And you and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation are leading the charge on the so-called 65-25. Tell us what 65-25 is.
Absolutely. So a few years back, there was a Georgetown University study that was done that mapped out by state what the needs were for the workforce in order to meet the economic needs of each state. In New Hampshire, what we adopted was 65-25, which is a goal of 65% of our adult population being highly skilled or credentialed by the year 2025, and that's in order to meet the demands of our economy and to help businesses in the state. So as part of my effort, and I do a lot of different things, and actually a lot of what has already been spoken about here today also falls under the umbrella of my work, but in the adult population within that world and the leadership skills and sort of upskilling of our workforce, we've been doing some work around trying to do partnerships, get businesses partnering with higher ed to help them to identify what the needs of their employees might be, trying to look forward to the future for who's going to be stepping up into those leadership positions, who will be the next in line for running the company. And this is where a lot of businesses have been partnering with the community college system, for instance, where there are ways to work with higher ed to customize different types of educational experiences for those employers.
Yeah. And who's involved in 6525? Only the BIA, the Charitable Foundation, but just give us an idea of how widespread this is now.
So it's really throughout the state. It was initially adopted by the community college system when the study was brought into the state. The New Hampshire Coalition for Business and Education is a group that's operating in the state, has been operating for several years, comprised of educators, business leaders, legislators. That group adopted 65 by 25 shortly thereafter. It was then brought to the state legislature, which approved, I want to say in early 2016, there was a House resolution to approve that this is something that the state should be thinking about and working towards as a goal. There have been multiple groups who have come together to strategize about efforts specifically early on within the educational space, so K-12 and higher ed groups. As time went on, the business community really nudged the BIA in particular to say, well, with your connections to the business community, we'd like to tie into this as well, and we'd like to see how that we can help and be that next step for students in the state and for our adult learners as well.
Now, part of this and what feeds into 6525 is below the degree programs is so-called professional development. And professional development is being adopted by many businesses in New Hampshire now to train their middle level, especially their middle level employees in things, as I said, like leadership, communications, customer service. At Granite State College, this is something that has become a priority. That happens to be a client of mine. And in terms of being candid about it. But it is becoming so important, not just to attract employees, but almost more so to retain the ones they have. And so professional development now becomes perhaps a benefit. And many businesses are now paying for that. And so we'll have something like a leadership academy that we've had now for 3 years at Easter Seals here, which is a 3-state organization in healthcare. And they've taken their middle-level employees, and we've held these leadership academies with them for professional development. And so people that have skills, but not necessarily leadership capacity, now have that. And so that has become important to healthcare organizations in the state, to technology groups, to retail groups, to tourism groups, and something that then leads, hopefully, to degree programs that gets at what Sarah was just talking about. So thank you, Sarah. Now let's turn to career and technical education. This is something that is key to this economy that we live in right now, where everything has become technical to one degree or another. And with us is Christine Carr, who is the director of the career and technical education effort here in the state. Christine, are we seeing enough student successes in utilizing career and technical education programs of study in New Hampshire? Just tell us about it.
Sure. Yeah, we're seeing a number of successes, but we always want more. Yeah. And so the challenge for us is to really get out there and engage with the community. Right now, NHCTE believes we're facing probably one of the most exciting times in the career and technical education community. It's a real evolution. I mean, we totally understand where the gap is and where we need to be. So what's exciting for us is let's look at our work and let's see how we can improve it, craft that messaging, but mostly we need to do some innovation about how we're engaging with those communities.
How do you get your students? I mean, these students are going to your technical schools. But tell me, just talk about that, because I think a lot of us don't know how that works within the whole school system framework.
Right, that's a really important question, because that's one of the communities that we serve, which is what we call essentially the Career Counselor Network. And going back in time a bit, there was a time when there was a very rich and robust network of career counselors, but because of society and the social problems that we have faced, we find our guidance counselors spend an awful lot of time serving those kinds of needs. And so our career counselor network has really diminished in size in terms of the CTE network. To provide some context, we have 27 centers across the state that make up about 10,000 students. And so we have a very small number of career counselors serving that community.
Yeah. We've got about 5 minutes left, right, Mr. Director? Let me just ask a general question for all of you. Here we are talking about workforce in New Hampshire. We've had the in-migration of educated and talented people to New Hampshire, which was robust in the 90s, is now down to a trickle. We have an older population in the state. We have about, and Commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong, about a 10% drop in children graduating from high school in the state. We have a situation where workforce, and then, of course, the immigration of folks from overseas has been reduced. And so a lot of businesses in the state are finding it hard to find the labor they need. What do we need to do? Maybe what's the first priority in dealing with all of that we ought to be looking at right now? Anybody? Commissioner?
Well, so the focus that I'm having in terms of a priority is trying to make sure that I'm preparing that next generation of students to be equipped to enter into the workforce. And Sarah had talked about the 65 by 25, and I really see that as kind of a North Star for the state. It really has allowed us to rally around and have a clear vision for the future of how we prepare our students and how we prepare our workforce. So whether it's in the school systems, making sure that students have opportunities to get exposures both in schools as well as out of schools, in extended learning opportunities, to business, to work, so that they know what work looks like when they get out. It really does a good job in terms of connecting the education system with the employment system, so that students are exposed to companies and exposed to work so that they can more easily transition there. I think that there are a lot of opportunities working with the K-12 system, moving into the community college system and on into higher education and out into the workforce, to make sure that we make this a seamless process for students. Really, because every one of these systems is designed to prepare students for their futures. And so that needs to be one system, not a disparate type of a thing. It needs to be easy for students to transition through there. So we've got a lot of activities going on, and I think that I'm pretty optimistic about the future.
Anybody? Yes, Susan.
Yes, and I would add what we've learned from the 65 by 25 effort is that 46% of the people who already live here, the adults, only have a little bit of college. And when we look at what our business and industry needs, those folks need more training, as you've talked about, and to our commissioner's point of view, just more connections and serving the people who are here. A plug for the community colleges, 93% of the people who come to community colleges stay in our state. So while we have to look for new people, we have to do things for the folks that are already here so that they're able to move into that higher paying job.
And I think there are business groups in the state that have taken that position. We need to deal with the population we have here in the state, because the in-migration is not what it used to be. And that's so key. Anybody else on that question? Senator.
What I will say, at least from the state's viewpoint, is I think it's very important that we keep building up our workforce, because frankly, the more we build up our workforce, the more capability we have of being able to draw in additional businesses. Because for me, as a recruiter in the high-tech industry, I like working for the high-tech industry. I liked working for the high-tech industry. So do some of these kids coming out of school. So the more we can build up a workforce, the more businesses will come in, and I think the more we'll see them staying.
Yep. Okay. Well, that is terrific. Let me just thank all of our panel members. Kenny Merrifield, New Hampshire Commissioner of Labor, Frank Edelblut, New Hampshire Commissioner of Education, Jerry Little, New Hampshire Commissioner of Banking, Dr. Susan Heward, President of Manchester Community College, State Senator Regina Birzado of Derry, Wyndham, and Hampstead, Ms. Christine Carr, who's Executive Director of the New Hampshire Career and Technical Education Association, and Ms. Sarah Colson, Director of the Workforce Accelerator 2025, that's 6525 that we're talking about, of the Business Industry Association New Hampshire, And from Pinkerton Academy, Dr. Timothy Powers, Acting Headmaster, and Dr. Timothy Butterfield, Chair of the Board of Trustees. And I'm Fred Coker, and I'm delighted to have been able to moderate this panel. I think the one thought I'd leave you with, that businesses and schools need each other more than ever. Thank you.